Hello, everybody. This is Morality Matters, and I'm your host, Mike Belton. And I'm joined with us today by a very special guest, Kim Valentine, a former Secret Service agent, retired. Love to be able to hear about it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it was like to be a Secret Service agent?
Hey, Michael. Well, thank you for having me on your show. I'm so proud to be with you and love what you're doing. So yeah, I retired from Secret Service in 2020. I started in '96. So mathematicians tell me that's 24 years in the Secret Service, and I love my career. It was storybook as far as I was concerned. I sure never expected to be doing the things that I was doing even when I entered, but I ended up serving three sitting presidents. I was on the president's detail two different times for about 5 years apiece, so 10 years total. And that's full time. Of course, Secret Service, you're always protecting somebody, and it's whether you're doing criminal investigations, you drop those to go protect people, president, vice president, visiting heads of state. All over the world, but I did three sitting presidents: President Clinton, President George W. Bush, and President Barack Obama. And so those two 5-year tenures were separated by a little bit of time. So I left and came back and was a supervisor when I came back, and then a shift leader. And so I just loved it. I love the mission. I love the camaraderie with other agents and getting to work with law enforcement, military people all over the world, different countries. But I think I hit 74 countries and
Wow.
48 out of the 50 states. So
Oh,
moving and shaking a little bit out there.
yes. So that's just so fascinating to me because I don't know if a lot of people really have that, that much of an insight into the Secret Service. But one of the things that's just really compelling to me is, it doesn't matter what party is in office. I mean, you guys do have a duty to do, and you're willing to put your life on the line. I mean, explain, what it takes to do something like that.
Yeah, it certainly for me in my tenure, it really was not much of a consideration. I mean, I started in Louisville, Kentucky in '96. Kentucky that year was number 2 in political visits to California, so we were a very busy little state. And Al Gore was hitting it, Bill Clinton was hitting it, Bob Dole, and the job was the same no matter who we were protecting. And you just go out and do your thing and do your very best to keep these people safe. And it didn't really enter my mind certainly who they were. I didn't have to agree with them. I just had to keep them safe so they could go get to the next election, and the American people can do what they want. We had a saying, it's a little bit of a joke, but we would tell people, you elect them, we protect them. And you can elect whoever you want, we'll just protect them. And so when I was sent to the president's detail in 2000, it was the last year of President Bill Clinton. And, I worked the midnight shift, and I came in the next day, and George Bush was the president. And, all new staff, all new people, all these different faces walking around the White House. But, we were protecting the president. I had to get used to a new code name, which was a little tough. But
Right.
calling out the wrong name. But that just goes to show you, though, how it didn't really matter to us who was in there from a work perspective, because you had a job to do and you get it done.
Well, that's just so fascinating to me, and thank you for your service. I think those are one of those jobs that is just a truly patriotic job because it goes across party lines, and it's one of those things that's just truly admirable. And so,
Mm.
thank you for your service that way. For those of you who are watching the show, Ken Valentine is also an author of a book called "Cheating Death."
Mm.
And you can get that on Amazon. I will also place a link within the description below, and you can go and purchase that book. And that's about your time at the Secret Service, right? You want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Oh yeah, you bet. Cheating Death. Never intended to write a book, but traveling so much, 74 countries, I found myself away from family a lot. And
Hmm.
we have 5 kids, and it didn't wasn't lost on me that there's always a chance you're not coming home from a mission. And it's not glamorous. I didn't think I was going to be taking a bullet or jumping on a grenade for anybody. It was more likely that you're gonna die in a car accident overseas, or a plane crash or something like that. But the point was, who's going to speak to my kids when I'm gone?
For those of you who do want Cheating Death, make sure that you get on Amazon and you take a look at that. Go ahead and get that for your reading library. And I will tell you that I'm concerned from a moral standpoint over this nation. We've had so many issues, especially over the last year, where it just seems like, and I think I say it every year, like every year, it seems like we have more and more things that happen in our country where it just seems like things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I've had so many people say, Mike, look at it on the positive side, but it's so hard
Yeah.
sometimes when you see all the negative things, especially what's put out there in the media, and I'm not just talking about the legacy media, I'm talking about social media and stuff like that too. There's just a lot of bad things going on out there. Over the past year, obviously, there's been three assassination attempts. One of them, Charlie Kirk, which he had his own personal security detail, but these are really politically motivated. And it seems like the violence and the political rhetoric and all that is only ramping up in America. What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think the violence is ramping up, and there's really just one side that uses that kind of rhetoric and then claims that they don't mean actual violence, but it's so hard to separate, and kids don't know the difference. I think it started way back with the violent video games and the advent of online participation where you can do stuff to people and with people that you would never do in person. Well, now they are doing that in person, and then they don't understand even why it's wrong. So, to your point, morality does matter. And
Right,
if it's wrong in person, it should be wrong in a video game. It should be wrong in a song. It should be wrong when you're on TV talking about it. And so to try to separate and segregate those things and say, well, I can say that. I just don't. I don't. It's not tied to my actions, and I beg to differ. I believe that that is different. You do not have the right in this country, despite our freedoms, despite the First Amendment. You don't have the right to threaten to kill the president. It's
right.
one of many things. You don't get to yell fire in a crowded theater. You don't get to threaten people. It's called assault. And so it does seem like that rhetoric has ramped up, and it shouldn't be a shock to us when people follow through, fueled by the rhetoric that's out there.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I wish that we would just somewhere wake up as a country and just say, you know what, I'm going to get away from that, right? Because you're right, people have the freedom of speech and they can kind of say a lot of things, especially on social media and put all kinds of stuff out there. But we also live in a free enterprise kind of society. Like we don't have to buy the albums that of
That's right.
songs that are bad, right? We don't have to buy violent video games. We don't have to do those kinds of things. We can vote with our dollar, right? And say, you know what, I'm just not going to do that, right? Like when I screen movies before I go see them, I'm like, I'm not going to see a movie if it's just not going to be aligned with the way I think, right? Unless I'm just doing it for research, but otherwise, I'm just not going to let those thoughts, especially immoral thoughts, just enter my head. So, but anyway, one of the things I kind of want to ask you is, it seemed like, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like that the Secret Service, and I know it was post your time, came under a lot of scrutiny during the assassination attempts of Donald Trump on whether they had kind of gone the wrong way, maybe laxed on standards, maybe got a little too DEI in it with the previous director. I imagine you're probably still in contact with maybe a lot of different agents and stuff like that. I like to believe that the ship is riding. I mean, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that, Michael. How long do we have? My goodness. Yeah, I was in my mother's hospital room where she was getting ready to have open heart surgery when Butler happened, the first attempt on President Trump, and really in disbelief. Hard for me to believe that would be possible on a former president who the following week was going to be the nominee
Right,
for the Republican ticket. And my initial assumption was that somehow somebody got a handgun into that crowd and shot him from close range, or shot at him from close range. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that someone from outside the venue would be able to get off clean, clear shots on a protectee. And I've been very vocal, I think fairly vocal in my criticism of the Secret Service, and I just don't think that the job that the Secret Service is given is that difficult. It's not brain surgery, and so in my day, for sure, you create a perimeter, you create an inner perimeter and an outer perimeter, and nobody's allowed in between those two. Only law enforcement are allowed between those two, and the and every brand new Secret Service agent learns this, that if you build a perimeter, you have to create a buffer outside of that, because otherwise you got clean inside the perimeter, you got dirty outside the perimeter. Well, if dirty can just hand dirt over the fence to the clean, it's not clean anymore. And so
Right.
what Butler to me was that problem. It was also the fact that you had an outdoor event with a stage, and they always elevate the speaker on the stage so that they're visible by the media and by all the people in attendance. And you mitigate those long range threats through a number of different ways. And we got creative. If it took flags to just obscure the view from a long range threat, then use flags. If you can use something harder than a flag, please do. If you can use both, overlap those, that's great. And we did. You use trucks, you use cranes, you use whatever you have to use to obscure that view. And even if sniper guy can lay up in the woods in a tree, from a mile away, and there's certainly plenty of snipers capable from a mile away, you take away their ability to make a good shot. There are plenty of times where you can get a round into the venue, but not a precision round, not a targeted round. And you have to manage that and mitigate that specific to the venue where your protectee is going to be. But my word, no buffer that I could tell existed at Butler, and this kid was able to be in what should have been the buffer, atop a roof that gave him a clear line of sight into President Trump's head, and then get off shots. And it's just inconceivable to me that there was any attention to detail given, which was always our mantra, is pay attention to detail.
Right.
And that was allowed to happen. Now, I will say the reaction was great. The
The
team that
counter
was
sniper.
there,
Mhm.
yeah, the team that was there, Sean Curran was the detail leader that day. He's now the director. They had a swift and effective reaction. The problem is that action is always faster than reaction. And so the prevent defense failed. The offensive defense to secure him after the fact was great, but they were just as likely at that point to be securing a dead man as they were to be securing a guy with a nick on his ear from a round that should have killed him.
Right.
So the reaction was good. The preventative maintenance for that event was horrific. And
Right.
you mentioned several factors that may have played into that. Certainly the director, who has been a friend of mine for many years, colleague, um, uh, no doubt dropped the ball talking about this after the fact when they asked who's responsible for
Mm.
what happened at Butler. Her hand should have gone straight up and said, "I am. We are responsible. We've been given the privilege, the mission, and the duty
Yeah.
to protect this man. He leaves the stage bleeding from a gunshot wound. It is absolutely, unequivocally your responsibility."
Yeah. It seemed like
There
she was
should
being
have
a
been no.
little deflective and defensive.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, I was a little
I,
shocked by that response too.
that was a little shocking to everyone, because it's clearly our responsibility, and
Right.
how and why that was allowed to happen. The speculation is that the two advance agents, the lead advance and the side advance, had never ever done an outdoor venue of that kind or that size where long range threats existed. And that is very possible, to
Mhm.
get to a point in your career where you've never done one of those. If you've not been assigned to the president's detail, maybe even
Right.
the vice president's detail, then you probably haven't worked one of those events. And to put them in charge, if that's what actually happened, was a leadership mistake. and that should never have happened. I don't care what the excuse is why these two needed to do that site. If there was nobody left, fly somebody in. And
Right.
if you can't find somebody to fly in, I would have volunteered. I'd have gone and done that, and we would not have had long range threats.
Yeah, so we had another one. Of course, this wasn't Secret Service, right? So the assassination on Charlie Kirk, another
Mm,
outdoor event, somebody able to get on the roof and get a clear shot on them. A horrific event to happen. It seems like there's between the Secret Service and some of these security details, there are seem to be some protective measures that seem to be on the rise. More and
mhm.
more venues, if they are outdoors or certain situations where there could be lines of sight, that they're using bulletproof glass as a shield to do that. Not sure why that was never done before in the past, but maybe it's because logistics. I don't know, but then the other one, it seems like they're moving more and more events indoors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Outdoor events present a number of issues, and certainly from a security standpoint, they make your job harder. But you know, our job was always to say yes. President wants to go for a walk. We can do that. To give us some time, and we'll make it happen, and we can make it happen safely. But there were precious few times when we said no, and
right,
outdoor events are one that you have to be prepared to say no, but you try to say yes. And I think with the Charlie Kirk shooting, what you saw was the difference between executive protection, which is um, that close security, the more almost like a bodyguard kind of thing, where you've got a few people right around them that to prevent the harassment, to prevent someone from getting the close up shot or a stabbing or throwing something on them, something like that, versus event security, which would take into account that long range shot, which would create that perimeter, push that perimeter out. And you don't have to use counter snipers if you can secure a venue all the way out and take away all the long range avenues of approach. So they didn't do that there. Don't know who to point to for that. It maybe just wasn't contemplated, but that's the difference. And when you talk about executive protection, this is what would have saved the United Healthcare CEO. Was
right.
having an executive protection team that said, "Sir, you don't need to be on the sidewalk at 6 a.m. or whatever time he was out there." Certainly not by himself. There are
Mhm.
other avenues we can take, interior avenues where you're not exposed to people lurking and waiting for you, random acts of violence, that kind of thing. The Charlie Kirk was more a problem of event security, where nobody was brought in to secure that whole venue, and it's a big undertaking. It's not an inexpensive thing to deploy the assets necessary to secure a whole venue, but it's also not as bad as people think. I mean, you go and you do in advance, and that's where the real work of protection is done, where you prepare to prevent. And I wrote in the book that preparation meets opportunity. Well, the opportunity should have been to arrest someone trying to breach their perimeter with a rifle, instead of now we're looking for a guy who pulled the trigger. And look, you can look too at the video and see that his executive protection team stood there while he went down. And there's nothing they can do at that point. They're not fast enough to stop bullets. And by the time they heard it, it was over. And there
Right.
was nothing that they could do. So, there are various levels of security and protection, and that is one level. It is very good most of the time, but it's not effective, obviously, for a big outdoor event.
Yeah. So I would love to be able to have you back again and be able to bring you back regularly on the show to talk more about the Secret Service. But there's another topic I kind of want to talk to you about, the increase in violence in America. And that's what we're seeing right now with ICE agents. Everybody, we have one from Secretary Christy Nome. Please take a look.
be with all of you today and give you an update of not just what the work that President Trump is conducting across the country to make families and their communities safer, but also what this office in particular has focused on, the results that they have delivered, but then also what the state of Florida and the partnerships that they have brought to the federal government as far as incarcerating criminal illegal aliens and bringing them to justice. Today marks 9 months since President Trump has been in office and since he began his work to restore American safety for our families that live here. What he has accomplished for the American people is nothing short of extraordinary. We appreciate what he has done to make us safe again, to secure our borders, and to make sure that he's protecting our people. Since January, the Department of Homeland Security has arrested over 480,000 criminal illegal aliens. 70% of those individuals have criminal charges against them or have been convicted of those criminal charges. Across the country, we're making communities safer so that families can thrive and they can prosper and they can enjoy the kind of freedom that this country was established to provide.
All right. So she provided some really interesting statistics and so forth like there. I've got an update from Fox that said that there have been over 3,000 cartel members now that have been arrested, over 120,000 criminals.
Hmm.
Adding to the deportation, this has all happened since they started in a matter of months. Just truly an incredible thing. But they are operating in a very, very dangerous climate in America. What do you see this going on?
Well, the first thing that went on is we opened the borders and we turned a blind eye to who is coming into our country, and it now we're reaping the problem that created because we don't know who's in this country. I mean, we just opened the front door and went to bed for a little while, and we don't know who's in the house. So ICE is out there with the incredible mission of having to identify and round up these people that have no doubt formed cells and cartels and various missions to take America down, to rape America and to get what they can out of her before they're either found or caught crossing back over. So, this is in large part the result of opening the border, tying the hands of ICE, Border Patrol, and the like, saying you can't stop them. And so I don't know what they expected to come from that. If that was, what the design idea was there, I will never understand that. But
Yeah.
millions of people
So
came
what we're
across the
hearing,
border.
yeah, so what we're hearing from some of the initial, this might be highly speculative, but what we're hearing is the idea that at least the left was looking at that to increase votes in the area, and
Yeah.
part of the greater strategy of giving them free healthcare was part of that to add to their voting base in order to win elections. But I think it's so disingenuous because it's at the cost of America, right? So and there's some people out there that believe like, well, there's a large segment of maybe that side of the party that just doesn't believe in America to begin with and would rather we create something else because of our history or what have you. That being said, I'm a true-blooded red, white, and blue American, God-fearing man, just like you are, and we certainly don't want to see bad things happen, like sex trafficking happening in the United States, the influx of fentanyl coming into our country, seeing violence the way that it is. And I will tell you some of the images of videos like I'm about ready to show you cases where it looks like war out there. Let's take
Mm.
a look. Just your thoughts on what you see about violence that you see about actually targeting ICE agents.
Oh yeah, and look, if we don't put this down in a direct and um, harsh kind of way, it is going to continue because there are people in this country that don't see anything wrong with that, that think that somehow that they are the bad guys and that whatever is facing them is somehow the good guy, even though they're the ones burning and looting and raping the kids and doing all this stuff. So I will never fully understand that. I've listened like you have to the explanations, both by people on the right and the left, and I'm just not going to be able to square that in my little mind of you any of that. But I'm on the board of directors at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the rate of exploitation, COVID, the shutdown, the kids at home on computers all the time, the exploitation has skyrocketed, and the number of missing kids is going to continue to go up when families come to the border and intentionally get separated either by the cartels, by their traffickers. They don't ever see those kids again. And our job is to try to stop the exploitation, to find those missing kids and reunite families. And there's so many forces working against that reunification effort. ICE's job is
including
to
our own
help
Americans.
with that reunification. And
Right.
people want to demask them and vilify them and then cause harm to them. And it's just it makes no sense. But it starts to make a little bit of sense if you look holistically at what has been going on. Where and look, I could say they took prayer out of schools. They didn't just take prayer out of schools, they took history out of schools. Kids don't understand our history. They don't understand the founding documents. They don't understand,
They even
you
took our
know,
pledge out of the schools.
they've taken all that away. And I don't see that as unconnected. I believe that is a systematic effort. It is evil in my eyes
Hmm.
that they would try to devalue our history, that they would teach that to the kids, but they don't stop there. They teach kids that America is actually evil.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how far we've come in a very short amount of time, because a generation ago that was not the case. That wasn't being taught anywhere except on college campuses. Now it's being taught to first graders. You live in an evil country, and you can be a dragon if you want to be. Well, it's neither one of those is true. You live in a
Right.
great country, you live in a free country, but you can't become a dragon just because you want to be. You can pretend to be a dragon, you can act like a dragon, you can play dragon for a short amount of time, but you are not a dragon.
One of the things that just kind of just disheartening about that is just, I mean, like what you previously said. I mean, they are looking at ICE agents as if they are the enemy. They are evil. I mean, and I heard somebody says like we are probably moments. And I really hope not. I really hope we come to our senses. But they say, we're really close to maybe even another civil war within this country. And I can't imagine that personally. But I can't imagine a lot of stuff I see going on right now. I would rather us get to a place where we can get healthy, but the rhetoric and just the overall clash. I mean, from Congress on down, we just cannot seem to get along, and there's this huge divide that only seems to be getting wider. What do
Yeah.
you think is going to turn this all around?
Well, I really think that there's only one thing that's going to turn it around, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. I really don't see how this is going to change. It certainly is not a logic issue, because they've taken logic off the table. That is not part of the discussion. So it's very emotional, at least from the other side. And when you insist that black is white and white is black, then you've lost the argument. Now all you have left is violence when things don't go your way. So they what we call, and when I went on the Gettysburg staff retreat, and it was a leadership type of thing that the military does, Secret Service does, if you're fortunate enough to get to do one. They
Yep.
call it an escalated commitment, and that is what I see on this leftist uh, side, is an escalated commitment where they have to now defend what they've the road that they've started down, and it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not logical, it's not ethical, there's no part of it that makes any sense at all, and yet they're stuck defending it, and they have to defend that, or the rest of everything that they have stood for so long crumbles and they fall apart. And so I think that's why you see such silliness, such nonsense being taken for their cause, and violence is all they have left. So they've lost the argument. They're losing the war. In words, they have to shoot the people that speak the truth, like Charlie Kirk, and violence is all they have left. So I think we better be prepared for violence. I'm not suggesting that, that we, get kids carrying guns and all this kind of stuff. I just think we better expect it. And the only thing that's going to change that really is revival. And when this country wakes up, I think it'll be, to God's glory that it's something that he did, not something that we came up with on our own, just like when this country was founded. That wasn't a bunch of smart guys. That was a loving God providing a home for people who were willing to follow him.
Yeah,
And
one of the things I think that are very positive about, if you can find something positive about assassination attempt, I rather look at it like the aftermath that, it's been turned into more of a positive is with Turning Point USA. It's had a very, very major impact on our youth. And it does appear like there's revival happening amongst our youth. More and more of the younger generation is like, wait a minute, I've been living this particular way my whole life. This isn't right. And there's this moral compass that seems to be clicking off, and they're seeking truth. And there's like, I've been lied to my whole life. I want to know truth. And it seems like more and more now. I think that would be, I would agree with you. Revival needs to be a huge part of it. And I think I see it within our youth. For those that's starting to come on, for those that are further along, it might be a little bit more difficult. Probably take a lot more divine intervention for something like that to happen. But I will tell you what, we are out of time. This was so amazing. Ken, I have to have you back. Hopefully, we can bring you back. We could talk about so much more. But when it comes to things like everybody, we know what moral rightness looks like. We know that, trafficking children is wrong. We know like violence, whatever way you try to justify it is wrong, right? Assassinations are wrong within this country, right? Drug trafficking, getting people hooked on fentanyl is wrong, right? So, although we know those kinds of things, sometimes those lines seem to be blurred within America. We are going to stand on truth here because this is morality matters, and it's
Amen.
because morality definitely matters. Thank you, Ken.
You bet. Yeah, glad to
Appreciate
be on. Let's do it.
it. All right. God bless everybody.